when Mercury, the planet of the mind and thinking and speaking, is found in Scorpio, the sign of war, death, and transformation, we get an interesting expression of the drive to connect. It's in the water element, so it thinks connection is the most natural and organic thing in the world, but it won't be chatty like a Mercury in Gemini or evangelical like Mercury in Sag. This placement tends to be reserved. It's associated, as I said, with the god of war. So when something novel occurs, it begins developing a strategy to cope if it doesn't have one already. The communication here is deliberate. You see, when Mercury in Scorpio connects, it's looking for alliances. Life is battle, and they desire a comrade in arms. This is when you really get their appreciation and their trust. They value honesty too, because they're going to find out the truth about you anyway. Why dance down the garden path? They have an extrasensory ability to perceive and intuit. And you're more likely to survive if you notice what's on the wind and can anticipate the next move. They've got a survival strategy. This is the most introspective Mercury placement. It has a lot of grit when it comes to taking stock and looking honestly at what it has and what it doesn't have to give. Because this placement is brave, it wants to be respected for what it thinks and says. Try not to interrupt them, or they'll save the important, intimate, sacred ideas for someone else. There's always a lot going on behind those brooding eyes. This quiet and careful position will ruminate rather than blurt things out. They go through revenge fantasies and imaginary triumphs. I call it recreational flexing of the stinger. And they should know that for this placement, that's completely normal. It's associated with shadows and even the parts of our bodies that are usually labeled private and taboo, the sex organs, the rectum, the anus. In short, they're wired differently. What strikes others as uncomfortable doesn't bother Scorp at all. A full experience of life means you look under the rock. So it's no surprise that this placement likes forbidden and secret knowledge, esoteric teachings about magic and the occult. It's looking for power. In beginning astrology books, it's said that Scorpio likes being mysterious. If you have people distracted by what they imagine about you, then you're free to do your work in private. You see, they like digging. What they dig into is the question. Is it a body during an autopsy to find out cause of death? Or do they dig into the accounting records of a business to find out what it's dying of? Maybe they dig into the mind in a therapeutic setting, helping someone turn their psychological darkness into light. My great-grandfather had Mercury in Scorpio, but because he was an illiterate Russian peasant, he couldn't be anything professional. But he picked up a shovel and helped dig the hole that would become the New York subway. Digging is expressed somehow because Scorpio is associated with the deep down abyss of the underworld. Likewise, Scorpio holds a lot of tension. They always have conflict going on within. When this sign is paired with the planet Mercury, it shows mental conflict. What's thought versus what's said. The need to survive and the tendency to self-destruct. Scorpio is associated with transformation, which is what that tension is for. Inward torture causes change. Inward pressure creates situations where they can grow. The same way pressure creates diamonds and fossil fuels, useful things, wealth. This can be a disturbing process, of course, but water can't sit still. And we know Scorpio is defensive because it has a shell that signals to us my insides are soft and the world is full of dangers, so I have my armor on. Now, what do we make of the pinchers? The pinchers are just like the crab's claws. They hang on. Messages from the hand of Mercury in Scorpio do tend to be repetitive. Why does this placement keep bringing back past ideas and betrayals and memories that should be over and done with? Because you aren't done yet. There's still some juice left in the rind, and you'll know when you've learned every aspect of the lesson when the thought has been shed completely. And hanging on is a good thing if you're talking about a detective with a cold case or the commitment you don't dare break. The pinchers represent the loyalty for which Scorpio is famous. And this tendency toward repetition of ideas can also have an underbelly, and the person turns obsessive. I don't think I've ever met a Mercury in Scorpio who wasn't plagued at some point by obsessions. There's a perfect symbol for this dynamic in one of the myths associated with Scorpio. If you remember in the personality profile of the Scorpio sun, I talked about a mythic creature called the Hydra, with whom Hercules does battle. This is a 9-headed, snakish thing that has poison breath and spits fire. Hercules, representing Scorpio, goes to her den and starts shooting flaming arrows at her. Now, think about this. There's a deadly thing lurking in an abyss, minding her own business. So, of course, Hercules drives her out into the light. He starts chopping off heads with his sword, but for every decapitation, 2 heads grow back. Hercules finds himself in a predicament because he can't stop swinging the sword or he'll die instantly. But every time he swings the sword, the monster grows larger. So he gets locked in an obsessive loop. The only reason Hercules comes out of that alive is because he has help. He has that ally he so values. This symbolism says that when you're in deep trouble, reach out for help. Being able to select and position an ally is a strength, not a weakness. So go get the therapist who'll help you excavate the abyss and stop the Hydra. Power is at the bottom of everything to which Scorp is drawn. The battles, the knowledge, the mysticism, the alliances. Mercury's in Scorpio learn about portable personal power. They know that mastering the self is winning the war. As the Mercury in Scorpio Teddy Roosevelt said, if you could kick the person responsible for most of your troubles in the backside, you couldn't sit down for a month. Any Mercury in the water element has to tame their emotional nature, and every person with Mercury in the second water sign, Scorpio, has to tame destructive impulses and obsessive thoughts. However, they can't do away with destruction completely because this is the sign of regeneration, and something has to break off, fall apart, or die for something new to be born. It's good to close here with something that may be obvious. Because Mercury in Scorpio tends to look at and look for the darkness in their environment, this placement is always at risk of developing a cynical mind and misrepresenting itself through negative language and just generally stirring the shit. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, Mercury in Scorpio. I'm Joy, more videos to come.